Hello, beautiful friends and book lovers. I hope that you are all doing well. I have the house to myself right now, and it just feels so weird. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should film. Today, I am going to be reviewing Who is Maud Dixon, which is written by Alexandra Andrews. I have seen this all over Goodreads, all over Bookstagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's just the same as this handle, it's just at Heather's Book Review. But I saw a lot of really great things for it, and I just wanted to pick it up. So I chose this as an Amazon Audible token. I really do love Audible or audio books now that I have my son. It just makes it so easy to, play it when I'm working out or play it when I'm cooking, and it was an enjoyable experience. I do feel like the Goodreads synopsis of the book gives too much away, so I do want to just tell you my synopsis of the book. So basically we have our main character named Florence, and Florence is an aspiring writer. She works at a publishing company, basically as like an assistant. And she really, like everyone on her team, all of them really want to become writers, right? Like that's the goal that everyone has. And that's why they're all working at this publishing team to try to get their foot in the door. But essentially the hottest author on the market at the moment is someone named Maud Dixon. So Florence is talking with her coworkers very early on in the story, and everyone's talking about how Maud Dixon is actually a pseudonym for the author. So there's like some speculation if Maud Dixon is actually a man or a woman, and there's just all this like crazy like tension that you can just tell like when all the coworkers are talking, like it almost becomes sort of like a tiff between all of them because you have a lot of people believing it's a woman and some believing it's a man. But anyways, Florence just stumbles on the opportunity to work for Maud Dixon, this very mysterious author. And that's all I'm going to say. I feel like the actual synopsis goes like way more in depth, and it just kind of takes the fun away from reading the story. So there's my brief synopsis. So who would like this book? I can't really compare it to like any movies, but there are two books in mind. One of them heavily is The Last Mrs. Parrish. I wasn't as huge of a fan as everyone else of that book. I have reviewed it. I'll link it up here. But that is a very like well-loved book. I just felt like it was a little too lengthy and like kind of predictable. But this story, Who is Maud Dixon, definitely has elements of The Last Mrs. Parrish. There are also some plot points that can kind of tie into Verity as well. While this book is not even on the same caliber as Verity, there are some aspects that, as I was reading, it made me think of Verity. If you're new here, then you don't know, but I freaking loved Verity. I've also reviewed that. I'll link that up here as well. That is like one of my favorite thrillers of all time. I'll also be linking all the books I talk about in the description box for you below. But if you have not read Verity and you love psychological thrillers, just get that book right now because it is absolutely insane. But anyways, this book kind of reminded me of Verity in some ways, but like I said, Verity is much better. So usually I like to talk about something that like really stood out about this book to me. I don't want to give a spoiler, but there is a setting change in this book that I found really intriguing, and I felt like it was fun to read because I haven't read a book that took place in said country before, so that was really fun. But unfortunately, I was just left feeling the entire time I was reading this like, wow, this is so similar to The Last Mrs. Parrish. And like, have you guys ever read a book and you weren't really, the biggest fan of it, and then you read another book and it just reminded you too much of the other book and you couldn't really enjoy the current one that you were reading because it was just too similar? That's kind of how I felt with this one. That being said, you guys know I always rate my books on my reading skill, and I am going to give it an enjoyable read. It's predictable. There was one major twist that I was like easily able to call. However, I will say the book wraps up really nicely. And if you're new here, I'm like super, super, super picky on how books wrap up. Like if the climax of our book comes, right? And then we have like 60 more pages for the book to end. I hate that. Like, no, it's just like have an exciting ending and leave it. Like you don't need to stretch it out. This book wraps up really nicely, and there were some aspects of the book that I wasn't able to guess, some parts of the plot that I didn't see coming, which was nice. So I'm gonna give it an enjoyable read. And like I said, if you like The Last Mrs. Parrish, like a lot of you loved it, pick this one up. I'll link it down below for you because you'll love this one then. Like they're so similar. But like I said, just for me, I didn't really like The Last Mrs. Parrish, and I just kept thinking about that book the entire time I was reading, while I was reading this one. But it's still a good book. It's a decent read. I will say, if you are looking for a book that is going to completely wow you, that is a thriller, I have recently read and reviewed The Stalker. I'm going to link that up here for you. That is insane. I randomly requested that on NetGalley and got approved, and it's pretty cheap on Kindle. So if you click on the link below, you should be able to see it's pretty cheap. But oh my gosh, I highly recommend that book. That one had me on the edge of my seat and was amazing. But I am going to leave you at that because I am going to get into the book chat part of the video for those of us who have read. So if you're new here, I would love if you could hit that subscribe button and hit that post notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new bookish related video. All right, so if you're watching this, you read the book, let's just talk about Helen for a second. She was just odd. For those who've also listened to this audiobook, our narrator gave her like a fun kind of like Southern twang. And I don't know if it's just the age of the actual narrator or if the tone of voice or whatever, but like I was expecting Helen to be older than she was. Like I was expecting her to be in like her 50s. So when we found out that she was actually 32, I was like, this is weird because she's like super racist and not compassionate. I just felt very confused when we found out she was 32 because I just felt like her actions and her morals and everything did not really reflect someone of that young of an age, and that was just odd. But man, she did not have any compassion. I feel like that scene with the owl that was like hurt in the road and her like not wanting to help and Florence being like, no, we should help it. I was like, right then and there, I knew she was bad news. I'm like, if she is not going to have compassion for like this injured animal, then she probably doesn't care about a lot of other things, including people. The one major thing that I predicted was when Helen was like, you know what, we need to escape to Morocco. Like, of course, we all knew that she was like trying to get away from something, right? Because that was like very out of the blue and unexpected. But I thought in my head, I'm like, what if Helen has some messed up plan in her head to try to write her second book? And that's why she's taking Florence. Like, what if she has this terrible plan and like to see how Florence is going to act things out so she can have like content for her book? And in a way, that's exactly what happened. I will say I didn't know the route that the book was going to take once Helen made her return and then ended up killing Nick in the pool. Like, I feel like at that point of the book is like when it really started to pick up for me, because I really didn't know where it was going at that point. Like, I had, guessed like, oh, this has something to do with the novel, but like I didn't know where the book was going then. So that kind of made it exciting. I did not predict that the dead body of Jenny would be on Helen's property, but I did predict that Helen killed Jenny. It was so obvious that when Helen was asking Florence about her personal life and she's like, oh, like, does anyone know that you're working for me? Or does anyone know that you live here now? And she's like, no, like I'm not close with anyone. You could tell that Helen was like prying because she wanted to make sure that her new assistant was someone that was very isolated. Florence was just so god awful. Like, in the beginning of the book, when she's sleeping with that other woman's husband and like doesn't have any guilt over it and all this stuff, you're like, okay, you're a bad egg. You're a bad seed. What's going on? We all knew that, she was wanting to get her book published, right? And then she tried to blackmail him. I thought that was so funny. She tried to blackmail him, and then he was like, yeah, I'm gonna sue you, kind of thing, which was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, she was a terrible character, and she ended up getting everything she wanted in the end, right? Like, don't get me wrong, Helen was a terrible character, but like Florence not only killed Helen, but she also killed Greta to just, you know, keep that anonymity and also keep what she wanted. And she got all that money because, you know, Helen ended up giving it to her in her will or whatever it was. But it's just, you know, I feel like we don't see a lot of books where the bad character ends up getting everything that they want in the end. So I thought that was a kind of cool ending. I felt like it was a very intense and like action-packed book. So yeah, if you have read it and want to chat about it, please leave in the comments below what you thought about it. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.